What's going on, guys? Good afternoon. Let's talk more Geno. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Geno Smith a little bit more because there's a lot to talk about here. Maybe I should change my channel name to Geno Brendan Nelson for a little bit here. I don't know. Can't be the worst idea. But seriously, though, let's dive a little bit more into another angle of the Geno Smith stuff, and this is trade value. If the Seattle Seahawks do decide to take a different approach at quarterback in 2023, and they tell Geno, look, great year, you did awesome, you did as good as anybody could have expected, probably better than anybody could have expected, but we're trying to go in a different direction here, and you will get your money, you will get the opportunity to play, you will get the opportunity to build on what you did in 2022, but it's just not going to be here. Now, of course, if we're going to do that, we don't want to get nothing for you. We want to trade you. And the way you would do that is slap the franchise tag on him and then trade him to another team. And then that team, of course, they're not going to keep the tag on him. They're going to extend him. Whoever wants Geno, there's probably going to be a little bit of a bidding war. You trade him, and then obviously the tag gets rescinded when the team extends him to whatever contract they're going to extend him to. That's how it would work. So, Geno Smith gets tagged. What is his trade value? What can we expect to get back for Geno Smith? Let's try to figure this out here. First of all, just quick refresher. Let's remind ourselves what we're dealing with Geno Smith here. Okay? 2022, played every game. Led the league in completion percentage, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, QB rating of about 101. Really good season. Made the Pro Bowl, made the playoffs. Really, really good. Now, before this year, of course, there's really nothing. He basically was out of football for several years there with how little he played. He was literally out of football in 2019, I think. But we're looking at this 2022 season, and we're saying, okay, this is a quarterback who is clearly capable of playing very well in this league. And he's going to turn 33 in October next year, so you're basically trading for a 33-year-old quarterback. So if we try to tag and trade Geno Smith, that is basically what we're going to be putting out there for teams to bid on. 33-year-old quarterback coming off a really good, not super elite, but really good year. You're also getting a 33-year-old with not much wear and tear on his body because he's only played 60-something games in his career. He's only had 51 starts in his career. So the age might even be a little bit deceptive because of how fresh he should be compared to other quarterbacks. So I want to look at two recent trades in the NFL. Two recent trades of quarterbacks to try to judge this. And the first one is going to be Carson Wentz. This was a couple years ago. Stop playing video. We don't care about you. The Carson Wentz trade from the Eagles to the Colts. So this was the first Carson Wentz trade. What did the Eagles trade, or excuse me, what did the Eagles get when they traded Carson Wentz to the Colts? Well, let's round it up here. The Eagles received what ended up being a first-round pick a year ahead and an immediate third-round pick, which was 84 overall. Now, that first-round pick was conditional on Wentz playing at least, I think, 75% of the snaps. Yeah, 3/4 of the snaps. And if he didn't, I think it would have been a second-round pick in 2022. But basically, they got an immediate third-rounder and a future ended up being a first-rounder. Now, when a pick is in the future by a year, traditionally what you do is you say, okay, we're going to take the value of that pick and reduce it by a round. So basically they got, in that trade, let's use the chart here. Let's whip out the chart. A middle second round pick, because at the time they didn't know where the pick was going to be. So we're going to say, let's just take a middle second round pick, 430 points, and then the 84th overall pick. We're going to say it's 170 points because, well, the chart is telling us to. So 430 plus 170 equals 600. What is 600 equivalent to? A late first-round pick. One of the last first-round picks in the draft. So basically, while there were some conditionals in there that might have reduced the value of the pick a little bit, at the end of the day, the Eagles traded Carson Wentz and got a late first-round pick. What did Carson Wentz do the year before he got traded to be worth that first-round pick? He was only the worst quarterback in the league, led the league in interceptions despite only playing 12 games, had a terrible 3-8 record, 57% completion, less than 2,700 yards, basically threw one touchdown for every interception. Just a really, really bad year. And I remember watching football this year thinking to myself, he's the worst quarterback in the league for this year. Now, in previous years, he had been good. He had a pretty good 2019, played in every game, made the playoffs, showed some of the ability that made him promising. And obviously, you can look at things like what he did in 2018, 2017, and say, wow, that's a really good quarterback. Injury prone, yes, but extremely talented, makes a lot of really nice, good, big plays. And there's definitely something here. Now, this one's hard, right? Because Carson Wentz, there are some extremes in favor of him. When this trade was made, he was younger. He was only going to be 29 the next year. So a good deal younger than Geno. He had more draft pedigree. He was the number 2 overall pick. And that was relatively fresh in people's minds because he was still a relatively young player. Whereas Geno was a second-round pick, and that's a decade in the past. I don't think people really think about that anymore when they think about Geno because it was so long ago. And he had seasons that were better than what Geno did in 2022. Like 2017, where he was going to win MVP before he got hurt. Maybe 2018 he was better. I don't know. Before he got hurt, he may have been. Now, granted, he did get hurt, and that is part of what you're trading for with Carson Wentz. But you can say that Carson Wentz's ceiling over the last several years has been higher than what Geno showed in 2022. But at the same time, he was coming off a terrible season where he looked completely shot. He was way more beat up than Geno is now because he had been playing pretty much every game in his career. And even with the injuries at that point in time, I believe Wentz had played more games in his 5 years in the league than Geno has currently played in his 10, or at least he started more games. And you put all this you put all this stuff together, and I would say Carson Wentz probably had a little more trade value than Geno does now, but I'm not 100% sure. Now, there's one other element to this that I have to mention. It would be disingenuous for me to not. When the Eagles traded Carson Wentz, they took on a dead cap hit of about $34 million. They had to eat $34 million. That's 16.5% of the cap almost. So when they're trading him, the other team is aware that, hey, not only are we giving up Wentz, we're paying for most of his salary for that year. So if you want to make the trade, you got to give us a little extra. Geno doesn't have that problem. If we tag and trade him, there's no dead money. We have no problem with any kind of dead money whatsoever. And teams are going to know that. So they're going to say, hey, it's not like we're asking you to eat a bunch of money, so the trade should not really be that big in comparison to something like a Carson Wentz trade. That's a valid point. So I think with that combined with the other factors in the trade, mean that while Geno as a player in his straight up value is comparable to what Carson Wentz was when he first got traded, then Geno's probably a little bit below that. But how much below it, and how can we quantify that? That's what we're trying to figure out here. Matt Ryan, the Colts traded for Matt Ryan last year from the Atlanta Falcons, and all they had to give up was one third-round pick, which was 82nd overall. The value of the 82nd overall pick is about 180 points. So a lot less than the Carson Wentz trade. Right? Sound good? Make sense? Everybody on the same page here? Yeah. What had Matt Ryan done to be worth one third-round pick? Well, over the prior 3 years to the trade, which was 2019 to 2021, he had a trio of seasons that were okay, right? They were okay. The team was losing. The team was bad. They had a losing record during that time. In fact, Matt Ryan had not had a winning record as a quarterback since 2017. His numbers were still okay. 26 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 4,500 yards, QB rating of 92, QB rating of 93. And then in 2021, the bottom started to fall out here. 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, less than 4,000 yards for the first time in a while. For the first time since, I think, 2010, actually, it looks like. QB rating of 90, just barely competent at this point. And, you know, the end was coming. He was, by the way, going to be 37 the following year. So age was also a big factor with this trade. Age. So on no level should Matt Ryan be really close to the value of a Geno Smith in a trade when you put these things together here. He's older. He wasn't playing as well over the last several years. Like, what Geno did in 2022 was significantly better than Matt Ryan's previous 3 years before the trade. It was, you'd have to go back to 2018 to find a season where Matt Ryan was better than Geno. And he was significantly better than Geno that year, don't get me wrong. But that's 3 years ago. People shouldn't really care about that stuff at that point. What people should care about is the last few years, plus the knowledge that he's just going to get older, just going to get worse. And at that point, he had shown himself to be like a barely competent quarterback at that point. And there was a ton of miles on him because he played almost every game in his career. He missed, like, 3 starts in his entire Falcons career, plus all the playoff games that he played. And you mash that all together, and we have a player who really shouldn't be worth all that much. He's barely a starting caliber quarterback. And in 2022, of course, he regressed to the point where he wasn't even worthy of starting. But even at the point of the trade, this was just supposed to be like a mediocre stopgap. And he was worth a 3rd-round pick. So that should be like the floor for the Geno trade, and we should definitely be going a little above it. Now again, caveat, Falcons had to eat massive dead money when they made this trade. $40.5 million. Nearly 20% of the cap. Crippling. Murder on their salary cap. But the Falcons were willing to do this because it was a throwaway year anyway. I mean, Julio Jones was also eating $15.5 million dead. Like Deion Jones, Dante Fowler, they were flushing. And they just decided they were going to eat it for a year and figure they weren't going to be very good. And lo and behold, they weren't. And yeah, they were prepared for that unfortunate inevitability. But there's still a factor here where the Falcons are going to make it known, hey, we're not going to give him away and pay all his money. If you want him, you're going to have to give him a little more than normal because of all the money we're eating. I understand that. But still, you look at Matt Ryan and you go, that's just at this point, a probably below average starting quarterback at best. Probably he's going to get even a little worse than that. But maybe you see something in him that you like. Maybe you think you can give him the tools that he needs to be better. All of a sudden, of course, you weren't. And it should play a factor, of course, especially when you compare it to somebody like Geno, who will have 0 dead cap if traded. Not a concern at all. But clearly, Geno should be worth more than Matt Ryan was. So basically, we're saying less than the 1st-round pick that Wentz was worth, but more than the mid-3rd-round pick that Ryan was worth. I think he's closer to Wentz than Ryan, but the dead money makes it really interesting. So my read would be a Geno Smith trade should be worth something like a early 2nd-round pick in value. I don't think it's going to be a 1st-round pick unless a good team, like, I don't know, maybe the Ravens lose Lamar Jackson and decide, hey, we need a quarterback. We're ready to win now. Let's go get a quarterback. Or, I don't know, maybe the Giants lose Daniel Jones and they're like, oh, no, we need a quarterback. Or, something like that. Maybe you could get their late 1st-round pick. But more realistically, I think you're going to either say, okay, a team like, I don't know, let's say the Colts want to do the Geno Smith, the veteran QB thing again. You could get their 2nd-round pick for Geno maybe. Or, and I think this is the most realistic option, a decent team that needs a quarterback like Tampa Bay gives you their 2nd-round and 3rd-round pick for Geno. So that's what I'm saying. 2nd plus 3rd for Geno in the middle to late portions of those rounds. That would be my guess on Geno Smith's trade value. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you disagree or agree. And I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks.